boats to bring in the troops on D-Day, and with support from the new floating tanks, the Allied command now confirmed 5 target beaches for the invasion. Each was given a code name. 2 beaches for the Americans, Utah and Omaha, and 3 for the British and Canadians, Gold, Juno and Sword. The landings were scheduled to take place on the 5th of June, 1944. The plan still had a major weakness. If the Allied troops could not take control of the beaches swiftly enough, the Germans could rush in reinforcements. The Allied troops would need time to gain a foothold. The solution was to drop 17,000 paratroopers behind enemy lines in the opening hours of D-Day. American paratroopers would be dropped to the west, British to the east. Their mission: to take control of the villages and roads directly behind the beaches and to throw a protective cordon around the invasion force. The paratrooper today is an accepted member of any fighting force. But for the US Army back in 1942, parachuting was in its infancy. Now, with just 2 years to go to D-Day, 13,000 American paratroopers would have to be trained from scratch. For some, parachuting was in the blood.
I grew up in a small farm in Bellingham, Massachusetts, and we had a hay loft way above the barn with a pulley, and I loved dropping the hay down about 15 or 20 feet down to the ground level, getting an umbrella, and I'd grab the umbrella and jump down into the hay, and that was the first experience as a paratrooper that I had.
The Army set up a new jump school in Fort Benning, Georgia. The equipment of the original trainees was primitive. No jumpsuits, only mechanics' overalls. No proper headgear, only football helmets. Makeshift rope swings gave the men the rough idea of a parachute drop. But they would have to go higher to simulate a jump from a plane. The school found its inspiration in an old funfair ride.
The first thing you would see was the obelisk and the globe, and that was the symbol for the World's Fair of 1939.
At the heart of the World Fair in New York was a tower that parachuted mums, dads, and screaming kids 250 feet down to the ground. In 1943, they were rebuilt at the jump school. For the novice, the practice drop was high adventure.
Up to that point, I had never been off the ground, I think, over 2 stories in my life, even as a carpenter. So when we went up on 250 feet and you're hanging by a single cable, and the wind is swinging you back and forth, it was exciting, very, very exciting. Of course, I had no control over the release. They released me, and I did make a good descent and a good landing, and a perfect right front tumble and so on, recover the chute.
The jump school had become a conveyor belt. Every recruit was rushed through training. With only a jump or 2 from the tower under his belt, it was time for Don's first ride in a plane. He was taken up to 1,200 feet.
All of a sudden, every man I know that came into paratroopers all say the same thing. What the hell am I doing here? What am I doing here? Maybe I don't want to do this.
First jump, the anticipation and the training, you finally had made it and you jumped out, you didn't know what was going to happen, and it opened and there was the exhilaration.
Without thinking, you reach one foot down to feel for the ground, you reach the other foot down, well then that's what they call bicycling. You're 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. Well, I did that and I hit the ground and I fractured a bone in my right ankle.
His first jump out of a plane, and Don was out of action. His training buddies carried on without him, doing the last few practice jumps to get their wings. Don was still laid up when his friends left for their graduation jump.
We all bought beer and whiskey and things and stashed it away. We were going to celebrate when they came back. And I recall hearing sirens, but we hear those every once in a while. And I waited and waited, and none of my buddies came in my little barracks. So finally I went next door and I went in and I said, "Where's all my buddies?" And they were, by this time they had the beer out and everything, and they said, "Take a beer." And I said, "Well, where's all my buddies?" And they said, "They're all dead." The pilot took up what they call a jumping attitude. He raised the tail a little bit, he throttled back on the port engine, and when he did, the starboard engine cut out and it hit the ground and exploded, and all of my buddies were burnt. They're all dead. So anyway, I took a beer and went back to my barracks and lay down. It was just quiet in the barracks, very quiet. All my buddies were killed.
In the rush to train such an enormous airborne force for D-Day, such accidents were inevitable. Don's buddies were only a few of the men who would die training to become paratroopers. Don got his wings a few weeks later, ready for D-Day. Back in France, the tireless Rommel spent the Christmas of 1943 inspecting the line of defenses along the coast. He was disturbed by what he saw. The Atlantic Wall was riddled with weak spots. He strengthened his defenses by peppering the beaches with another swathe of death traps that would be invisible to an advancing army.
Let's now move up the beach further. We had better be careful as we do so, because in between these successive lines of obstacles, at any point there may be mines, and probably will be, mines which are buried just beneath the surface.
These telemines were designed to knock out tanks. Rommel planned to lay 65,000 of them every square kilometre. With just one, Dr. Sidney Alford will demonstrate their power.
3, 2, 1. Let's go and see what happened. I cannot deny this is not really a tank, but it was a working vehicle before we pressed the button. You can see that it has separated main components, it's shredded the body, it's dispersed the body. There's body 50 meters over there, there's body over there, there's body over here. Here we have an unusually neat crater, that's beautiful. That will give you some idea of the power of a telemine.
Rommel planned to sow his killing fields in France with 200 million mines. Tripwire mines, jumping mines, and even mines that could be driven by remote control under enemy tanks. But that wasn't the end of Rommel's defenses. At the back of the beach, a field of barbed wire.
It's a horrible obstacle. This is to stop people. The horizontal wires, they're not pulled taut. But there's a reason for that. If you don't mind risking some nasty scratches, you can climb over a taut wire. But a slack wire, you can't. It's wobbly and you'll fall over. Remember that everything that happens here will be happening in a hail of machine gun and rifle fire.
The Allies needed a way to carve a path through the fields of mines and barbed wire. Clearing them by hand would take too long and would cost too many lives. What they needed was a machine to do it all for them.